I stumbled upon 3 terrifying true nightmares that'll haunt your dreams forever. I never should have opened that door. The moment my hand touched the cold, tarnished handle, a chill swept through me. A thrill, yes, but dread lurking beneath. What if I was wrong? What if I wasn't alone? My routine was mundane. Early mornings, hot coffee, and the hum of my favorite podcast filling the silence. But that day was different. A strange energy crackled in the air. Shadows draped themselves across the room, twisting and shifting as I made my way down the hall. The temperature dropped. Cold prickles danced down my spine. It began with whispers, faint and unsettling. I couldn't quite make out the words, but the tone clawed at my mind. Help me. I paused, heart thudding, my breath hitching in my throat. Was it real, or the echo of my imagination? I moved closer to the door, drawn by an invisible force. My fingers curled around the knob. Something shifted behind me. A shadow flickered, just beyond my sight. I spun around, but the room was empty. The air thickened, pressing against my chest. My instincts screamed to run, but curiosity was a fool's ally. Silence swallowed me whole as I leaned into the door, listening intently. Suddenly, the whispers grew louder, more frantic. You must see, panic surged within me. My heart raced. I yanked the door open. Darkness engulfed me. It felt alive, wrapping around me, icy fingers trailing against my skin. I gasped, stepping into the unknown. The stale smell of decay hitting me like a brick wall. The room was void of light, just shadows dancing in the corners. I tiptoed forward, every creak of the floorboards loud in the suffocating silence. Objects stirred in the dimness, rattling softly as if touched by unseen hands. Tony, my cat, would loved this hide-and-seek game. If only he were with me. I wished I could feel that comfort. Then came the noise, a soft thud, echoing through the void. I froze, limbs jolting with fear. Who was there? Was it all in my mind? I looked around, panic curling inside me. The feeling of being watched prickled the back of my neck. My breath hitched, tasting the metallic tang of anxiety. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a faint shimmer, a figure forming in the darkness. I stumbled back, heart racing. No, what was this? Couldn't he breathe? I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare. Get out! I screamed, my voice cracking. The figure stepped closer, shadows mingling with its form. A scream clawed at my throat, but it wouldn't come out. My legs turned to lead, rooted to the spot. It's too late. In a final, shattering moment of horror, I swiveled to flee, but the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang. Everything went silent. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. My scream dissolved into the oppressive silence that engulfed me. Panic surged through my veins as I pressed my back against the unforgiving wood of the door. The figure remained, an amorphous silhouette congealing before me as though darkness itself had come to life. I could see it now, ever so slightly, the glimmering sheen of its form, like an oil slick shimmering under an unholy moon. With breathing shallow and frantic, I tilted my head, attempting to pierce through the shadows that warped and shifted with unnatural grace. What are you? My voice quavered, echoing back with a haunting dissonance. Yet the figure did not answer. Instead, it melted further into the abyss, leaving behind a chilling absence, a void so complete that I could feel it gnawing at the very essence of my being. Then, the whispers returned, stronger this time, an unbearable cacophony of desperate voices. Help us! Find us! They twisted around me, entwining with the cold air as I staggered backward. I could almost feel their spectral hands reaching out, pulling me into their dark embrace. Irrational fear clawed at my throat, begging me to find a way out of this hellish nightmare. With every ounce of courage I could muster, I turned to the door, but it remained steadfastly shut, an unyielding barrier to escape. The very would seem to pulse beneath my touch, as if it were alive, feeding off my terror. The grip of anxiety narrowed my vision. Shadows lurked in every corner, stretching and contracting as if inhaling and exhaling my despair. Suddenly, an unnatural vibration coursed through the room, shaking the floor beneath me. It felt as though the very foundation of this cursed space was protesting against my presence. The whispers intensified into a chorus of agony, a dissonant symphony of souls trapped within the walls. I doubled over, clutching my head, trying to silence the maddening sound. "Listen to us." A voice broke through the chaos, resonating with a haunting familiarity. I gasped, recognition striking me like a dagger, my mother's voice. It echoed from the depths of my memory, wrapped in layers of resentment and loss. But that couldn't be, could it? She had been gone for years. "Help us!" The voice pleaded again, trembling and heart-wrenching. I reeled back, doubt festering within me. This can't be real. It has to be a trick of my mind. Forcing my will against the dread enveloping me, I breathed deeply. "Show yourself," I screamed, a wobbly resolve threading through my words. In response, the entity shuddered, expanding into a disfigured mosaic of grotesque faces, each one twisted in despair and fear, their eyes pleading for release. My heart twisted in my chest. This was no mere echo of the past. It was a collective of lost spirits, trapped in torment, reaching out for salvation or revenge. The shadows darted forward, closing in on me, each face gravitating closer, agony etched in their features. Panic clawed at the fringes of my sanity. I turned, throwing myself at the door, but it remained stubbornly closed, refusing to yield. "Let me out, please." But it didn't respond to my pleas. The walls pulsed, vibrating with the resonance of lost souls, and I could feel the temperature plummeting even more. My breath plumed in front of me, a misty specter of panic. I turned again, eyes wide, heart racing. What if they needed something from me beyond mere escape? A scratching sound blossomed from the floor, gnawing at the edges of my consciousness. Thick, black tendrils crawled up through the floorboards like spiders, seeking the warmth of my flesh. I screamed, recoiling, but the dark ribbons constricted around my ankles, dragging me toward the figures that melted into shape. They continued to murmur, their call growing louder, more insistent, a horrible symphony that was now unmatched in its terror. "Join us," they whispered, the grisly chorus enveloping me in a panic-fueled fray. I clawed at the floor, desperate to break free of the vile embrace. As I twisted and cried out, the tendrils coiled tighter, stealing the breath from my lungs. Just as everything began to blur, the figures surged forward, filling the dim light with their morbid dance. And in that crushing moment, I felt a cold hand grip my wrist, a touch that ignited a surge of memories. My heart lurched, realization dawning. This was not just a nightmare. It was a reckoning. Horror warped into something profoundly personal as the truth of the whispers settled like lead in my stomach. Just as my vision began to darken, the door behind me creaked, the sound echoing like a second heartbeat, a heartbeat that wasn't mine. The door swung open slightly, a narrow shaft of light spilling forth, illuminating the grotesque faces volleying toward me, their mouths stretched wide in eternal cries for salvation. I gasped. Freedom coaxed me on, but the finality of their desire pierced through the veil, stopping me in my tracks. "Help us, join us." In that moment, I felt myself torn between two worlds, the light behind me and the darkness crawling toward me. My mouth opened to scream, but the fate of my soul hung in the balance. And then, from the depths of that anguished clamor swirling around me, a single, familiar voice broke through, the voice of my mother. "Don't leave me again." Before I could take another breath, darkness consumed me once more, and the door slammed shut with a thunderous boom, leaving me enveloped in silence. The absolute stillness caved in around me, the oppressive silence thickening like fog. I remained on the cold floor, trembling, my breath shallow. The muted thrums of my heartbeat pounded in my ears, and the absence of the doorway, the light, it was suffocating. I instinctively pressed my back against the wall, hoping to merge into the wood, to become invisible to whatever horrors loomed in the darkness. Yet the darkness did not linger long. Whispers wriggled back into my consciousness, wrapping around me like invasive vines. "Find us, help us. You know us," they began again, a low murmur swelling into a desperate chant that suddenly resonated through the walls, echoing like a perverse cacophony summoned from the earth itself. My mind swirled with confusion. Who were these us they spoke of? With an effort that felt monumental, I leaned forward, catching a glimpse of my surroundings. The room felt different now, its very essence had warped. Where I had seen the amorphous figure, there were now more defined shapes slithering along the wall's shadowy limbs extending from the confines, struggling for form and coherence. They beckoned to me, enticing me with a sinister promise. Just beyond the reach of the dim light, I caught movement, a flicker that drew my attention to the far corner where the floor was marred by a jagged crack. The floorboards groaned like they were alive, and just beneath the surface, something writhed and pulsated. My stomach lurched, the tension pinning me to the wall. My instincts screamed for action. "Get out!" they howled, but my limbs felt too heavy, too numb. Suddenly, a piercing scream erupted from the night's depths, a sound that clawed at reason. It was a woman-esque cry, raw with anguish and pleading. My heart splintered under the weight of familiarity, shoving memories through the grim haze. I struggled to catch my breath. No, please, not her. I couldn't shake the thought that this was another victim, lost. Another presence bound in this cursed torment. I could feel the shadows swirling like a tempest, drawing closer, clawing at the edges of my mind. "Join us." The whispers urged again with intensified fervor. Suddenly, the oppressive air thinned, and an icy chill crawled up my spine. I could swear I felt fingers brushing softly against my skin, ghostly and fleeting, a reminder of my mother's warm embrace from long ago, now distorted into something unrecognizable. "Help us," a thin voice murmured, their syllables dragging like claws on glass. Each utterance echoed with an urgency that ignited both terror and a flicker of compassion within me. Perhaps my mother was here, weaving between the seams of this dark tapestry, desperately reaching out, fighting to be seen. My hands shook as I grappled with the dilemma. Would I dare to listen to their call or resist the pull of their despair? With a sudden violent determination fueled by adrenaline, I shouted into the darkness. "What do you want? Tell me." Instantly, the cacophony of whispers stilled, leaving a haunting stillness wherein only the sound of my labored breathing filled the void that I in response. The room darkened further. The shadows condensed and thickened like a heavy fog rolling in from every direction. My heart raced, pounding against my ribcage like a wild animal. Then, as if a floodgate had burst, shadowy forms exploded forth, flowing toward me with terrifying speed. Faces materialized within the chaos, eyes wide with fear, mouths twisted in eternal cries. "Find her," they shouted, their voices harmonizing into a tragic symphony. "You must find the room," distorted, twisting and bending. The shadows encircled me, their forms churning into a singular mass that coalesced tightly, suffocating me with the weight of their grief. My chest constricted, and I gasped for air, my sanity fracturing under the pressure of their demands. But just as they began to close in, the floor beneath me splintered even more dramatically, sending jagged shards shooting through the air. I stumbled and fell, grasping for something to anchor myself. The cries crescendoed, vibrating through the walls until suddenly silenced. In that sudden stillness, a cold realization washed over me. Something else had emerged from the void. The air thickened with a palpable dread as a lone figure detached itself from the swirling shadows. It was tall and gaunt, its features masked by the shadow that clung to it like a shroud. As it hovered before me, the energy in the room quaked with malevolence, and I felt my body lock in place, immobile with terror. "Now you are here," the figure rasped, its voice a chilling echo that rattled my core. "You shall suffer as we have, until you understand what it means to love and lose. A crack opened in the wall behind it, a maw of darkness that seemed to shimmer with the promise of horrors yet unseen. The whispers throbbed in my ears, pulling me toward the new abyss. Behind me, a second shadow began to take form, flickering like a candle caught in a storm. I could feel it, the unmistakable warmth of a familiar presence drifting toward me. Suddenly, my mother was there, face to face with the towering darkness. "Don't touch her," I screamed, finding my voice, a desperate surge of courage igniting within me. In that moment, the quiet fury of my love broke through, and I lunged toward her. But before I could reach her, the void yawned wide, consuming her, its grasp merciless and unyielding that I was swallowed by darkness as the last plea escaped her lips. Help! The world fell away, and the shadows closed in. I awoke gasping, but the air felt more suffocating than before. As I looked around, I found myself in a different room, but the oppressive weight of fear clung to the atmosphere. The walls were lined with peeling wallpaper, revealing the flickering shimmer of mold beneath. A dim light bulb dangled above me, struggling against the darkness as if it shared my dread. Struggling to find my bearings, I scrambled to my feet, the cold wooden floor sending shockwaves through me. The flickering light cast long, wavering shadows that swirled like phantom dancers across the walls. As I took a single, cautious step forward, a vision of my mother flashed before my eyes, her warm smile twisted into an agonizing expression. Pleading for my help from the void, my nerves prickled as I sensed something peculiar. The space around me felt electric, charged with a hidden presence. The whispers began again, a dissonant choir rising from the depths of the room. But this time, they were sharper, more defined. "She is ours. Keep searching. Find us." They wove through the air, saturating my thoughts, wrapping around my mind like tendrils of smoke. Trembling, I forced myself to move deeper into the room, my heart pounding aggressively against my chest. Shadows flitted at the periphery of my vision. I glanced toward a shabby dresser in the corner, its surface cluttered with the remnants of forgotten lives, old photographs, faded letters, decaying flowers, all imbued with a small-town nostalgia that felt bizarrely out of place. Yet among them lay a hollowed-out book, its pages riddled with cryptic entries and dark illustrations that sent a shiver down my spine. Curiosity spurting like hot blood, I gingerly flipped it open. The faint smell of mildew rose to meet me, as if the book had absorbed the heartaches of every soul it had touched. Each page revealed sketches of grotesque figures intertwined with symbols I couldn't comprehend. Below them, handwritten pleas poured forth in different scrawls. "Help us. Save me. Bring her back." Each entry seemed to vibrate with a heartbeat of its own, and I could almost hear their cries penetrating the stillness around me. Suddenly, a crash resounded behind me, as if the shadows themselves had rebelled. I spun around, and there she was, my mother, standing right in front of me, her body glowing like a candle in the enveloping darkness. But her eyes were vacant, soulless orbs that danced with despair, echoing a void I had never seen before. "Help them," she whispered, her voice a haunting melody that wrapped around my heart with an icy grip. "You must help them escape." "Mom!" I yelled, reaching out, driven by all-consuming desperation. But as I took a step toward her, something pulled me back, a force like a vice clamping around my ankle. Glancing down, I gasped as tendrils of darkness coiled around my legs like living snakes, tightening with a fierce grip, dragging me toward the floor. In my panic, I shouted, "No, I won't let you take me." But my voice broke against the rising tide of despair that surrounded me. The shadows writhed hungrily, and I could hear their whispers escalating into a chaotic chorus, chanting my name, luring me deeper into their realm. The figure of my mother faltered, flickering like an old film reel threatening to disintegrate at any moment. A malevolent shadow materialized next to her, its features obscured but its red eyes glaring with an insatiable hunger. "Do you see now? The love you cling to can destroy you. Escape is futile," it hissed, a cruel laugh bubbling beneath its words. I recoiled from the horror, my heart pounding in shameful rhythm against the inexorable dark. "No, I will save you," I shouted, but reality felt as flimsy as an autumn leaf blown on the wind. With an anguished cry, I rooted myself in the moment, summoning every ounce of strength as I wrestled against the shadowy bindings around my legs. Just as I did, the wall behind my mother cracked open. Realms of bleakness yawning, wide figures of agony gestured toward her, their faces contorted in a silent scream reverberating through my very being. Suddenly, a cold gale swept through the room, shattering the still air. I felt the walls tremble as the shadows screamed, their cries bursting forth in a cacophony of anguish. "You have to choose," they roared. "Choose now or forever be lost." The darkness churned, and above it all, I heard her voice calling my name with their echo, blending into the sounds of 1,000 souls in torment. My heart lurched, the fabric of my reality beginning to tear apart between the love I felt for my mother and the impending horror that surrounded her. With each breath, the shadows surged nearer, deadening the light, and the words of the anguished souls reverberated in my mind. "Choose!" I felt a rush of heat as I fought against the darkness that ensnared me, yearning for the light. The abyss whispered promises of darkness, and my mother's fading voice clawed at my heart. "Help them, honey." Remember the moment stretched painfully, and in the suffocating silence that ensued, I understood I had but a heartbeat left to decide between the pull of love and an endless void of despair. The clock ticked slowly, mocking me, and then the void erupted with a blinding flash, exposing the deepest fear of knowing what lay beyond. I gasped, eyes wide open to the shocking truth awaiting me. My vision blurred momentarily, as though reality itself was melting away. Shadows slithered toward me, hungry for the warmth of my breath, but beneath their ravenous chaos, I felt that the presence had changed. It twisted and turned, all-consuming, and now something more than despair coiled with each flicker of light. "Choose!" they screamed again, the terrors of countless lives merging into a single, overwhelming wail that shook my resolve. I could hear my mother's voice, now distant and reluctant, fading under the weight of the shadows. "Help them, help God." The desperation in her plea was an anchor, pulling me backward toward her, toward safety. But something deep in my gut warned me, shouting in unison with the chaos surrounding me. The shadows were not a mere product of my fear. They were alive, and they were hungry behind me. The world shuddered as the walls crumbled, revealing a vast chasm spinning with darkness, tendrils reaching out like 1,000 desperate hands. I felt an icy breath against my neck, a warning that chilled my resolve. It wasn't enough to choose one over the other. Both were poisoned with a truth I still didn't understand, a truth that begged to be uncovered even as it put my very existence in peril. Instinctively, I stumbled backward, but the shadows coiled tighter, their unrelenting grip wreaking havoc on my mind. No longer could I discern where my mother stood or where the darkness began. Each was consumed within the other, bound in a nightmarish embrace. As a bone-chilling laugh echoed in the air like an electric shock, the shadows shifted, their eyes now peering directly into my soul. "Find our sisters," the figure hissed, shifting toward me, its form vacillating between that of a lost child and something grotesque. "Save them, or perish." A single slender hand, drenched in darkness, extended towards me. Beckoning, I felt tears stinging at the corners of my eyes as vibrant flashes of life filled my mind before the shadows swallowed every last beam of hope. Memories of my mother's embrace, the warmth of laughter, the daylight that bleeds through windows, all twisted into garbled screams in the shadows' throbbing presence. Time wove itself into a tapestry of agony, a binding thread coursing through every choice I had ever made, each one leading to this moment. "Choose!" The echoes of anguish surged, clawing at my reason, seeking to unravel me entirely. "Find them! Their pain is your key." With a sudden burst of adrenaline-driven clarity, I lunged toward the void behind my mother, desperate to escape the dark vortex sweeping me back. Fate twisted cruelly as the darkness flared in response, breathing in my fear, nurturing it, and with that dread came the faintest flicker of light, a fleeting glimpse of salvation. But as I reached for the shadows, something within that bleak expanse caught my eye. Shapes, grotesque and skeletal, swayed in a dance that mirrored my own growing despair. Faces. I could see their eyes wide with terror, their mouths moving silently as they begged. Words of their desperate plight stretched through the air, threading their existence into mine. I hesitated, torn between the weight of the world around me and the cries of souls that needed liberation. My heart pounded as sounds of cries harmonized with the shadows. Choose us. Find our sisters. Save us. The pang of my mother's voice bled into the chilling cries, her agony tightening like a noose around my throat. Help them. She screamed once more, and the shadows erupted, brightening with a ghastly glow, revealing the silhouettes of those who suffered. The cacophony reached a fever pitch, and as countless souls clamored for my attention, an overwhelming dread washed over me. The weight of countless lives rested on my shoulders. Every moment suspended in time as my thoughts became an incessant whirlpool. I realized the grotesque figures in the depths were inextricably linked to her, my mother, and the specters that hungered for salvation. My heart twisted painfully. But before I could take a step forward, a horrific, bone-chilling scream erupted from the shadows, drowning out every other sound. My breath froze in my throat as the dark whirlpool suddenly coalesced, forming a menacing figure who locked its blazing gaze on me. "You'll never escape our embrace," it snarled, its voice like shattered glass. Then, without warning, the ground beneath my feet cracked open, revealing a yawning abyss lined with jagged teeth and ghostly fingers, eager to claim me. I felt the air rush out of my lungs, and in that moment of freefall, I understood the choice was not merely between saving my mother and those souls, but something so much darker that I screamed. But the abyss screamed louder, and then, as I fell, the chilling realization pooled in my veins. With my last conscious thought, I understood that the choice had been made for me. I was no longer simply lost. I was part of it now. The shadows clung tighter, and my mother's voice faded, replaced by a monstrous laughter echoing from the bottomless void that awaited me. Then everything went black. The silence that enveloped me was heavier than the darkness. It wasn't absent of sound. Rather, it was saturated with the whispers of those who had long since surrendered to despair. Each breath I took was laced with the bitter tang of their sorrow, and every heartbeat echoed with a warning. Time twisted into an abyss of confusion. I shouldn't have been aware at all, and yet I was. My senses heightened in the void, alert and trembling, as I drifted through this twilight realm, a space not governed by the physical laws of existence. Shapes flickered around me like moths drawn to a flame, vague outlines that danced just outside the reach of clarity, and I felt a push against my chest, an insistent pressure urging me to move toward a source of dim light pulsating in the distance, pulsing like a dying star. It beckoned me with a seductive warmth, an illusion of comfort in this disarrayed reality. The void amplified the pangs of fear with every step I took, whispering horrors that resided just behind the fabric of my thoughts. With shivering reluctance, I reached out toward the light. A voice interlaced with urgency threaded through the air, dancing in front of my ears. "Help us, find us," they lilted, their tones harmonizing like troubled spirits trying to piece themselves back together. My insides twisted into knots, recognizing the echoes of those I had encountered moments before, fragments of tortured souls that craved release. The light flickered, dimmed, swallowed by shadows that reared their heads like monstrous predators stalking their prey. I jerked back as a snarl sounded too close, a sound that caressed the very edges of my sanity. It was a voice both familiar and foreign, grating against the memories I held dear. "Join us," cooed with a sinister melody. "Embrace the darkness." And in the chaos, I began to see them, shadows coalescing into form, grotesque figures writhing in agony, faces twisted in despair, eyes brimmed with unquenchable hunger. Among them, I spotted my mother's face, distorted and lost in the tendrils of grief. "Choose us, save us," she screamed, but there was no warmth in her words. Her lips had grown pale, the love in her gaze flickering like a dying ember. Battling against the darkness that enveloped her, I staggered back, battling waves of dread as they coalesced into one monstrous entity. A reflection of my deepest fears, a creature comprised of every choice I had ever regretted, whispering secrets that clawed themselves into my soul. "You were always meant to be one of us," it rumbled, its voice a gravelly echo of despair. You are the key to their suffering. The ground beneath me shook violently, fissures forming like the gaping mouths of demons eager to devour. I bordered on madness, clutching my head as jagged memories danced around me, flashes of faces, places, promises broken, everyone blaming me for the pain they endured. You could have saved us, they cried in unison, the cacophony sharp enough to pierce the veil of my mind. The light pulsed harder, drawing me in, but the figures clawed at my limbs with ghostly talons, trying to drag me back into the abyss. You don't know what lies ahead, they howled. Don't step into the light. It's a trap. My emotions whirled violently. I was adrift on a tempestuous sea of torment. The dim light flared again, a beacon tempting me with promises long unfulfilled. Could it lead me to those sisters, to redemption, or would it lead me deeper into the maw of despair? The shadows lunged, their forms distorting, threatening to engulf me entirely, squeezing the very air from my lungs. Their anguished cries echoed unbearably loud, drowning the whispers of hope. Choose your fate, they roared, their faces contorting beneath the weight of their wretched existence as I stood on the precipice. My heart racing, I ripped myself from their grasp and lunged forward into the light. But as I felt its warmth wrap around me, a bone-chilling laughter erupted from the darkness, drowning out my exhilaration. You think you can escape? It taunted as tendrils of shadow flicked against the edge of the light, seeping through, twisting its very core. Then, abruptly, the light flickered, revealing the grotesque silhouettes of the souls I had tried to free. Their faces shifted, morphing into grins that were malicious and unervingly joyous. You're ours now, they whispered in unison, and a wave of dread washed over me, freezing my veins in terror before I could scream. The light blinked out as darkness swallowed me whole once more, pulling me into the vortex of horror, and I realized with a shock that I wasn't alone. A single hand, familiar yet grotesque, reached for me from the shadows, begging for deliverance. Mother, I gasped. As the scream caught in my throat, her eyes holding a mix of agony and something darker that sent ice down my spine. And just like that, an even greater terror emerged as a chilling voice echoed close, intertwining with my mother's plea. You have only begun to see the truth, child. As the abyss yawned wider, I was falling again, the shadows writhing around me like a storm filled with malevolence. And as I glimpsed her face one last time, the terror took root in my chest, realization dawning upon me that not all choices could bestow freedom, some could only consume. The plunge into darkness was unlike anything I had felt before, weightless yet suffocating, a paradox that twisted my perception of reality. I could feel the shadows swirling around me, curling and curling like smoke, fingers weaving painfully through the fabric of my being. Each second stretched into eternity as I fell deeper into whatever grotesque nightmare awaited me below. Forget this place, a murmured voice brushed against my ear like petrichor before a storm. It was filled with a sorrowful cadence, one that hinted at unfathomable regret. You mustn't remember, not now, not ever. Desperation clawed at my insides as my surroundings shifted. I landed in a dim, narrow hall, the air cloyingly thick with the scent of decay and despair. The walls were rough and cold, adorned with peeling wallpaper that depicted scenes of homes long abandoned, families caught in moments of laughter, now distorted into grotesque visages of sorrow. It felt as though the images were watching me, judging my every move. I tried to step forward but stumbled, half expecting the ground to dissolve beneath me again. Find the truth, the voice coaxed, echoing from the shadows. But be careful what it may reveal. My heart hammered in my chest as I pressed forward, propelled by fear and an innate sense of dread that something even darker lurked just beyond my vision. Flickering lights feebly fought to illuminate the gloom ahead, revealing fleeting glimpses of ragged silhouettes that darted in and out of the corridor's lengthy span, leaving only the chilling aftertaste of their presence. The deeper I ventured, the more pronounced the whispers became, each syllable laced with an urgency that felt instinctively wrong. They called to me in sickening harmonies. We remember you, they weaved into a palpable fog around me, a dreadful requiem of all my regrets. You left us behind, no, I gasped, stumbling backward as a hollow-faced figure burst forth from the wall, its eyes dark voids filled with madness. Recognition ignited my fear. It was a child? A girl with tangled hair and torn clothing. Her mouth a smooth, gaping hole filled with shadows that writhed against her throat. "You were supposed to help us," she choked out, a mirrored essence of every choice I had abandoned, each haunting consideration I had cast aside. "Please, I didn't mean to leave, please," I cried, but the words felt fragile, too late, drifting into the abyss where they were swallowed whole by the darkness behind me. The walls echoed with her tortured wailing, casting intense vibrations through my bones, and suddenly, the corridor burst alive with figures, shadows of children, twisted and elongated, faces contorted in anguish, colliding against one another in a storm of chaotic despair. They surged toward me, wrapping their limbs around my legs, pulling, tugging. "You said you would save us," a chorus erupted, their voices like jagged glass. "You said you would come back." With every step I took, climbing against the collective weight of their sorrow, I felt the walls begin to pulse, as if they were alive, a heartbeat synchronized with my thrumming pulse of terror. "No," I yelled, wrenching free from their grasp before sprinting forward into an entropic mass that swirled just ahead, aware that I had only moments to escape whatever awaited me in the unknown. I crashed awkwardly through a doorway, collapsing into a small, candlelit room where the air was thick with shadows dancing on the edges of sanity. Before me stood an elaborately framed mirror, its surface rippling like water, beckoning me closer. Dread coursed through me as the darkness pooled around my feet, threatening to warp my very essence, but curiosity gripped me like a tight vice. Gingerly, I approached the reflective facade, and as I drew near, the surface shifted, revealing fractured images of my past, a tapestry woven of regrets. Moments of joy turned to sorrow, and faces I once cherished, now twisted by the emotional storms that anchored me in this nightmare. And there, at the very center of it all, was my mother's face contorted with an expression that was both mournful and evil. "Reconcile our sins," she uttered through gritted teeth, her voice merging softly with the flickering shadows surrounding us. "No, I need you to understand," I shouted, desperation rushing through every nerve in my body. "I never wanted this." Suddenly, the mirror rippled violently, throwing back an image, a reflection of myself, cold and monstrous, grinning wickedly at the abyss behind me as if I was the architect of my torment. In that harrowing moment, I understood, gasping in horror as the realization struck with cold finality. It's not the past I must confront, but the darkness coiling inside my own spirit. Just as I turned to flee, the mirror shattered in a burst of darkness, scattering shards as cold as the void around me. Shapes of countless anguished faces spilled forth from the shards, howling my name, swarming around me, a storm of anger, betrayal, and forgiveness unmoored. In the throes of chaos, I felt a hand seize mine, gripping tight, sending a jolt of agitation through my core. I turned, eyes wide, breath hitched in my throat, to meet a gaze echoing my own terror. "You have to help me," came the wretched plea, drawing closer with each whispered word. "I can't," I stammered, as the shadows closed in tighter, swirling like a funereal shroud around us both. But it was too late to utter a denial. Darkness engulfed us, and just before we sank into the depths, the last lingering echo filled the suffocating air. "You are the only one," the abyss cackled with hungry glee, the ultimatum given, the strangled voice of despair calling us the trapped lawmakers of our fates. Where would this lead us? Relief, redemption, or an even darker horror yet unseen? The chilling uncertainty hung thick, and as the void closed in, my heart sank with one last, bone-chilling whisper: "Welcome home." The scent of damp earth permeated the air as I confronted the tightening tendrils of darkness surrounding me, raw fear clinging to my bones. I felt the cold grasp at my ankles, a desperate plea from the nether, pulling me back toward the desolation I had thought I escaped. The shadowy figures lurked just beyond my vision, their palpable hunger a gnawing reminder of what I had evaded. "Help, you have to help," echoed the wretched voice at my side, a whispered plea barely audible over the cacophony of mourning whispers. I turned to the source, the grip on my hand tightening, and saw not a child but a young woman, her face illuminated by a ghostly glow that flickered with every heartbeat of the shadows. Her eyes, dark and hollow, held a depth of despair that threatened to drown me. "Who are you?" I managed, my voice a fragile thing, caught in the grip of dread. "Someone like you trapped in this endless loop," she replied, her voice wispy and fragile as a spider's web. "You must remember. You cannot leave until." Before she could finish, the darkness swirled violently, the room dimming further, as if the shadows were feeding off our fear. Flickering candles sputtered and died, plunging us into a suffocating abyss. Panic rushed through me. "I can't stay here," I shouted, struggling against the weight of the sorrow that threatened to crush my spirit. "Then don't. Come with me," the woman urged, her grip tugging me toward a darkened archway at the far end of the room. I followed her without thinking, propelled by both dread and the flickering hope that perhaps she might lead me away from this nightmare. The corridor beyond the archway twisted and turned in on itself, the walls pulsating like a living thing, each heartbeat resonating with my own frantic pulse. Shadows whispered all around us, their breath hot against my skin, drumming a rhythm of yearning and loss as we ran deeper into the bowels of the eerie edifice. Jagged laughter erupted behind us, a discordant symphony of mockery, leading to echoes of past lives that spiraled through each room we passed. I could hear my name woven amongst the screams and crumbles of despair, the walls closing in around us with unforgiving cruelty. "Stop," I gasped, my head spinning. I could feel the weight of the darkness climb up my limbs, a cold embrace that left me paralyzed. The woman halted, turning to face me, her features warped, shadows dancing across her face, highlighting the fear that mirrored my own. "We can't after what's been unleashed," she warned, her voice cracking like glass. "What are you talking about?" I spat, panic and confusion intertwining in a suffocating cage. "The mirror shattered reality," she whispered violently, her voice trembling. "The shards have awakened the darkness. Given it form, it's hunting us now. We don't have time." In that instant, a low rumble echoed behind us, shaking the air until it felt alive. A figure lurked just beyond the shadows, draped in the remnants of night, its presence crackling with malevolence, the entity we had awakened, perhaps. The hollow echoes of tortured souls spilled through the air, cries for mercy and justice husking into the darkness, as the creature's shape twisted into an ethereal nightmare. "Go!" the woman screamed, her eyes wide, terrified. Her lips clammy, no longer the reassuring figure ID followed, but a haunting reflection of my own fears. I turned instinctively, adrenaline flooding my veins as I sprinted through the shadowy passages, desperately trying to escape the growing chill creeping down my spine as I careened around a corner. I came face to face with a door, warped and stained with darkness. Behind me, the sounds of heavy footsteps banished my hope, echoes like the loud toll of a funeral bell haunting my aura. I flung the door open, collapsing into the room beyond only to be met by an impossible sight. The faces of children swirled around me, their eyes sunken, tears of black ink trailing down their ethereal cheeks. They reached for me, their hands outstretched, a blend of ready forgiveness and insatiable vengeance. "You left us, come back," they cried, their voices blending in a horrifying cacophony. Terrified, I stumbled backward, ensnared by the spectacle unfolding at my feet. The woman I had fled with stood at the threshold, gasping for breath, unable to cross into the child-filled realm. "You have to choose. Save them or save yourself," she shouted, the shadows draping themselves around her like a funeral gown. I felt the darkness closing in, suffocating the light, my resolve fracturing under the weight of their anger and sorrow. The echoes of my own past collided with their wishes, blurring reality into a nightmarish kaleidoscope. Just as it felt my soul was about to shatter in two, the children erupted into a wailing chorus, and somewhere deep within the clamor, a voice rose triumphantly, a horrible acknowledgement of the truth I had buried deep inside. "You cannot escape destiny. You are one of us now." Panic clawed at my insides. The shadows leaped towards me in a ceaseless wave as I held my ground. I felt the ground tremble beneath my feet, the world shattering around me, each fragment spelling an end I couldn't comprehend, each shard whispering my name like a requiem to a wound that never healed. And just before I was consumed by the darkness, the last chilling thought penetrated my mind. What if I wanted this? As the shadows closed in for good, the door behind me slammed shut, sealing my fate in nightmarish uncertainty. Would I embrace my designs, or would I tumble forever in an endless descent of remorse? The choice was slipping through my fingers, darkness swirling, a cursed reflection of myself lurking ever closer, grinning wide with unholy glee. I staggered into the pulsating dark, my heart racing as the air thickened with despair. The whispers of the children faded into a haunting symphony, only to be replaced by a low, rumbling growl reverberating through the corridor. I backed away, feeling the blood drain from my face as a palpable dread bloomed within my chest. "Help me please," the woman's voice sliced through my frozen terror, echoing from the shadows above me. I was torn, the temptation of her plea clawing at my heart as the shadows hissed around me. Their breath hot on my neck that I turned, eyes scanning for the entity I had glimpsed moments ago. Despite the fear gnawing at me, I felt an undeniable pull to the woman, a connection forged in terror. What's happening? Why are they like that? Her figure flickered in and out of focus, an ethereal distortion tethered to the murky depths. They're lost like us, but you're different. The power of choice lingers with you. That's what they want. Her gaunt features contorted, twisting in anguish as spectral phantoms swirled behind her, overriding her image with luminous tendrils of despair. "Choice? I want to get out of here." "How?" I shouted, desperation surging before she could answer. A blinding flash illuminated the corridor, revealing monstrous silhouettes moving against the walls, a rush of shadow wrapping around me, tickling my skin like icy fingers. They coalesced into grotesque mirrors, reflecting distorted, anguished faces, each a fragmented tale of sorrow. The childlike whispers surged anew. "Come back. You don't belong out there." They echoed in my mind like a cruel reminder of my inevitable fate. The shadows morphed into fleeting memories, hastily forgotten moments etched into the depth of my psyche. Their faces awakening sensations I couldn't afford. A howl erupted, shaking the ground around me, and I stumbled again. The shadows grew denser, swirling and pulsing like an agitated sea, each undulation threatening to engulf me. Terror escalated as I realized the walls of this nightmare realm were closing in, relentlessly tightening their grip on reality. The woman's eyes pleaded for understanding as I grasped at the fraying thread of hope. "You must embrace them. Your past, your mistakes, they are part of you. Accept it and you will be free." "No." My frantic denial reverberated, drowning out the chorus of the children wailing for vengeance. I couldn't allow my heart to succumb to this hellish hallucination. Every instinct screamed that I had to fight, had to break free from this insidious grasp. That I lunged toward her, drawn by the flickering light of her essence, but she dissolved into countless fragments of shadow, each gleaming in pain as though my approach extinguished the small flickers of hope they bore. "I won't leave you," I cried out, my voice swallowed whole by the encroaching terror, knowing that my defiance was futile. Suddenly, the howl morphed into a cacophony of voices, shattered echoes of dreams laced with despair. They lunged forward, grasping, pulling at my limbs. "You are one of us now. Embrace it." The floor beneath me began to shudder. A vortex of darkness opened in the center of the room, pulling the shadows, both of the lost and the twisted, into its depths. An anguished scream emerged, rising above the din. It was my own voice, the sound of despair mirrored back through time and space. "Embrace your fate." The woman's once reassuring presence screamed from the void, now a haunting echo clawing through every fiber of my being. "No," I shrieked against the tide, my fingers clawing at the ground, desperate to resist. The shadows surrounding me thrashed and screeched, the anguish of their rage pouring into the air, suffocating my resolve. But then, amid the chaos, a sudden clarity emerged. I could still feel the pulse of my individuality, the choices I had made, the life I had lived. The memories flooded back like rising tides, laughter interspersed with heartbreak. Fighting through the despair, I screamed, "I am not yours. I am not just a shadow." With that declaration, the vortex roared, the shadows erupting in rage as a surge of light radiated from within me. An energy unlike anything surged, battling against the encroaching suffocation. The room exploded into a cacophony of sights and sounds, realities intertwining and crashing, a kaleidoscope of fragmented lives and dreams. But just as hope flickered within my heart, the vortex roared back in defiance, collapsing upon itself with an enraged scream. The walls cracked open all around me, reality distorted, faces leering in triumph. A familiar voice threaded through the chaos, calm and menacing. You cannot escape fate. It's all part of the game. And then, from the depths, a towering figure rose, a grotesque parody of the woman I once knew. Her face twisted into a sinister smile, an embodiment of every regret borne on my shoulders. Are you really willing to abandon them all? She taunted, her voice echoing sinisterly as the darkness shifted, ready to swallow everything whole as the shadows closed in. A choice lay before me: to fight back against the darkness, or to succumb and become what I had always feared. The moment froze, terror thickening in the air, and then I heard it, a child's laugh echoing ominously in the shadows behind the figure, crystalline and chilling. Your nightmare is just beginning. The air thickened, suffocating me, laden with anticipation as shadows twisted and curled off the figure, the sinister reflection of everything I had fought against. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in a rhythm that felt indifferent to my life. The echoes of the lost souls, their pleas mingling with the laughter of the child, resonated in my mind, forming a dreadful choir urging me to act. What do you want from me? I cried, the desperation leaking through my voice. The figure's grin widened, its eyes now gleaming like shards of ice. It stepped closer, darkness seeping from its form, drowning out every glimmer of hope. You possess the key, don't you? It hissed, voice a gravelly cascade of twisted promises. Your choices intertwine fates. You must choose how it ends, but know this: darkness craves unity. I recoiled, images of the desperate children swirling in my mind, and it hit me with haunting clarity. They weren't merely shadows, but pieces of myself I had buried, neglected in my quest to escape the pain. Grasping their agony, I felt a pang of belief rise. Was I truly meant to embrace this darkness to find the lost? Or would it consume me whole? Join us. End the torment. They echoed from the void, their voices merging into one unified cry. I felt the weight of the decision pressing against my temples, like a vice squeezing my mind. Conflicted, I shouted back, I refuse to let you claim my life. I can't join this nightmare. The figure tensed, its smile faltering, eyes narrowing. You're naive to believe you can separate yourself. The abyss lingers within a specimen of your choices. To liberate them means to welcome your demise. There's no escape. I felt the shadows edging closer, their grasp clawing at my ankles, whispering promises of comfort in exchange for surrender. Yet, through the chaos, I also sensed a flicker of warmth, a connection to the woman who had guided me here. Her memory burned like a soothing balm against the cold, igniting resolve. No, I am not afraid of you, I proclaimed, voice steady, standing firm in the darkness. Each shadow hissed around me, their sinister whispers fading into a deafening silence. I inhaled sharply, feeling an overwhelming rush of energy beneath my skin, fueled by every heartbeat that resonated with defiance. If I couldn't save them, I could save myself. Every fragment of hope fortified my resolve. In an impulsive leap of courage, I stretched out my hand, not to join but to break the thread connecting me to despair. I choose freedom. The moment hung taut between the echoes of my decree and the monstrous figure, both captive to its implications. Suddenly the world shifted. The shadows erupted around me, clawing and slashing, the entity's tormented visage warping into a grotesque mask of rage. No, you'll regret this, it screeched as the very abyss stirred, the walls trembling beneath the weight of its wrath. The very ground quaked as light burst forth from within me, a purifying brilliance erupting with incandescent fury. Waves of warmth surged, sweeping back the encroaching shadows, illuminating the faces of the lost children, their pain entwined with my heart. In that brilliant moment, I saw them souls freed from despair. I grasped the myriad emotions. Every joyous memory dispelled the dread suffocating me. The energy spun rapidly, I felt their essence merging with me, vibrant threads weaving our fates together, a tapestry of hope rising above abject darkness. But as the blinding light engulfed me, I felt a sting of hesitation clawing at the edges of my resolve, the figure writhing in the vortex, eyes wide with desperation. Choose them over yourself, and you will stay. In the face of temptation, my heart clenched. The truth pierced through. I once thought salvation involved losing oneself. But in that moment, I knew that to redeem those lost souls meant to embrace every part of me, light and shadow entwined. The figure's anguished grin became a piercing reflection of my own fears, forcing me to confront what I had long denied, my intrinsic battle against sadness. I want to be your prisoner, I screamed, the light intensifying, the abyss screaming back with fury. I will not. I am alive, and I choose life. With that declaration, reality tore wide, the surge cascaded, and a pulse erupted like a sunburst, annihilating the looming shadows and banishing the darkness. I could feel the threads of despair unraveling, breaking free as I heard their cries fade, transforming into a symphony of joy. Yet amid the cacophony, one voice shattered through, sweet and chilling, ephemeral as gossamer. You can't save everyone. That chilling reminder twisted in my gut, echoing through the vaulted expanse. Just as I felt victorious, the shadows shifted, whirls of darkness coiling back, re-establishing their dominion. And for the first time, I understood the depth of those words, their implication leaving a cold knot in my stomach. The darkness was not vanquished. It was merely biding its time, watching, waiting. Suddenly, as I stood alone among the vestiges of light, a mirror materialized before me, the same one I had seen moments before, reflections rippling like a still lake disturbed by an unseen force. What have you done? It murmured. I stepped closer, breath hitching, eyes widening in horror, and there they were, creeping shadows reaching toward me from the glass. Children's faces, pleading and remorseful, mingled with the anguished visage of my mother, her eyes darkened with betrayal. You think you can escape? They echoed, their voices a dissonant melody of despair laced with an ominous promise. You have only begun to see the truth of what you've chosen. Just as the last shred of darkness began to envelop me, I felt the earth tremble beneath my feet. My heart raced, limbs frozen with dread. I grasped the mirror's edges, desperate to flee, but the shadowy hands slid through the reflection, pulling me in. And in that moment, reality collapsed once more. A staggering emptiness where hope had once lived. I realized, with a terror both profound and eternal, that even in a moment of light, I could still fall. A faint laugh hung in the air as my world spiraled into darkness, leaving me with the final, harrowing thought that life and death wove an unending dance. A reflection tethered to an abyss that never truly faded. And as the echoes of my choices rippled through the infinite void, whispers taunting and sweet, I heard their last twisting promise. Welcome back.